I love Kung Fu. That was a quote from Kung Fu Panda, Po. Nice. There's so many I wanted to pick from, but that one, I was like, let's do that one.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Awful Takes podcast, episode 33.
Yep, 33.
Oh, my God.
Dang.
This is crazy. We are closing in on 1 year of us uploading.
Yeah.
It actually has already been a year since we started recording. However, I know when we started, we kind of just stockpiled what we were recording. And we took a little span of us waiting to upload until about, I think it was June.
June 21st.
Yeah. I have some ideas that I want to do for kind of like a 1 year kind of highlights, things like that. I think it'd be really cool just to kind of look back on some stuff. And then I think it'd be cool for us to maybe go over our favorite recommendation that we've given each other.
Yeah, I was trying to think about it because there's a bunch that you've recommended that I really have like connected with and I loved a lot. And
I think it'd be really cool.
I'm curious to see what yours is.
Yeah, but it's crazy. This is a crazy ride we've been on. Thank you guys for joining us. This is a show where we talk about movies, music, and I provide my awful takes for every one of you to listen to. And you don't have to listen. You don't have to indulge me, but I really appreciate it that you do. It's therapeutic for me.
Yeah, I'm actually his therapist.
We have a great movie to talk about today. We're really excited. However, we do want to get a couple movie news things out of the way. There's been a few things that have been popping up over the past couple weeks, so I figured we'd get on here and kind of break it down. One of the big things that I don't think people realize, obviously now with movies, anytime you see a movie come out and it's successful, there is always talks. Whether or not you hear it, there are always talks behind the scenes about making a sequel. Sometimes we do hear about it and it gets thrown around a bit. Like I know one of the famous instances was with the sequel to Joker. There was kind of a lot of talk. Obviously, the movie was really successful and there was rumblings heard about it, but there was no official work kind of being done until a couple years after. And it was kind of stuck in this weird limbo area of like, should we do a sequel? Do we want to do one? We don't know. And eventually it did get made. However, recently a sequel got announced for a great animated movie that I know everyone has seen and everyone's praised this movie. It's definitely one of the best Pixar movies to come out over the last 10 years. It is Coco. They have announced the sequel to the beloved animated movie. I don't know how to feel about it. I know there was always kind of talks pushed around and there was always this kind of thought being brought up of doing a sequel. However, now that we're here and it's officially happening, I will say the world that Coco is in is kind of a lot like Inside Out to me, to where there's a lot of potential there for interesting stories, interesting characters, things like that. Obviously, when you're dealing with the afterlife, that's just an interesting concept, you know? And it's like this barrel of great ideas that you can just pick from, you know, like a lot with Inside Out too, like the natural thoughts that come to your head of like, well, what other emotions are there? Things like that, you know, that's how I feel about Coco as well, of like, there's so much to pull from. I really do hope if they make a sequel, they kind of go for something maybe a little bit more different and treat that world and view it in a different way than we saw in the first one. I know that's a big ask, and I know it's probably not going to happen, but I think it'd be really cool, and I think it would kind of help separate it from the first one, rather than just feeling like, yeah, we're doing this again. Here we go. We're taking another spin at it. Wallied, how do you feel about this, Coco 2?
I'm kind of interested. Granted, I mean, the way the first Coco ends, I don't feel like you need a sequel, but I feel like if they are going to go in the sequel route, I think it could be kind of interesting to see how they kind of expand the world of like the dead and the afterlife and everything like that, and kind of see what new perspectives on death they could maybe give on it, you know? I think that could be kind of really interesting. I do wonder if it'll be focused on Miguel again, or if it's going to be maybe like a different character, or maybe like a different kind of story overall. But I'd be kind of interested. I'm kind of surprised they announced it so early, considering it's not till like another 4 years, you know?
Oh my God.
2029. So I'm like, it's going to be a while and everything. And I know the last one came out in like 2017. So by the time it comes out, it'll be like 12-year gap and everything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Color me kind of interested, I guess, you know? I'm not really sure kind of what direction they're going to take with it, but I am kind of curious to see.
I want Pixar to start doing stuff like this. They create amazing worlds and everything.
Right.
And I want them to start thinking of maybe doing more, not spin-offs, but, you know, just different ideas set within those similar worlds, you know, like the Monsters Inc. world. It's just has so much imagination. There's so much you can do with it. And I wouldn't mind more stories set in that universe, but not focusing around the main characters again. And anytime a different viewpoint on the main characters, it just feels kind of forced sometimes. Right. And it feels very convenient when the movie starts to play out. You're like, oh, they're just doing this for the sake of doing it, you know? And it's like, you have such amazing worlds and everything. Like, take that world and just throw new characters into it and with their own unique story. And it's still set within that same world that we know and love. It's just different characters. You know, I would really like Pixar to maybe try doing that. When I think about it, I've never really seen them do that other than maybe something kind of like Lightyear. That was kind of like I guess a different interpretation on characters we knew. However, that's what you run the problem of doing is you take some really beloved characters and now you kind of take this different spin on them, and half of your audience is probably not going to like it, you know?
Right. Yeah. That was not the best.
So I don't know. That's just my opinion, but we'll have to see. I would love to see some early designs and things that they're working on.
Yeah, definitely.
And where they want to take this story. I think they waited a while for the right idea. And now that they're officially announcing it, I think they did find something that's worth telling. Right.
It doesn't feel like a Cars where they just waited a couple years and they were just like, all right, here you go. We're just going to make another one because kids like the toys. But
exactly. Another big announcement that came very earlier than I was expecting. Conan O'Brien has been announced next year as the returning Oscar host.
Woo!
I know we were talking about this for a little bit, and this is honestly the earliest I've seen them announce this. And I feel like after the success of this show, they probably sat down pretty quickly with him and were like, hey, let's just lock you in right now. Because, guys, how many years did we have so many Oscar host drama? Like, I remember that whole time when Kevin Hart was going to do it. And I guess some old tweets or something came up and he backed out. And that's when we got Jimmy Kimmel. You know, there's can always be a lot of drama around the Oscar hosts and stuff like that. Right. So I guess this was them just kind of jumping ahead and be like, you know what? No, we're just gonna lock him in. And he was really successful, so let's just plan it out now.
Let's just take advantage of it, you know?
And it doesn't feel second-handed like some of these other Oscar hosts where they return, and it almost just feels like, well, we couldn't find anyone else, so we brought him back. That's how it felt with Jimmy Kimmel. Like, after each year, I was just like, it feels like they're just going to him because no one else wants to do it.
Oh, God. I was like, I don't know if I could handle any more Jimmy Kimmel for the hosting.
Yeah, and it just felt like kind of like second-handed of like, we just don't have anyone, you know? So, Wallied, what do you think of that?
It's exciting. I'm happy they're bringing him back. I think, if anything, he could probably even do a more funnier and even better job than he did this year, you know? It's exciting. It's really exciting. I'm glad they're getting him back to host because he did such a great job this year with the hosting and everything. So I'm very curious to just see what he'll do even more, maybe just like make it even bigger than it was from this year's.
And Conan did face a lot of challenges with this show. After he was announced, not only did you have the LA wildfires happen, his house was very, very close to a lot of the stuff that was going on. Could have ran the risk of it burning down. I know some of his staff who work for him did end up losing their houses and things like that. And then not only to mention at the beginning of the year, both of his parents ended up passing away. He faced a lot of challenges going into this show, and he was still able to turn out such an amazing performance and just a really great showman of movies. So now that he has a lot more planning and he won't have to probably deal with as much, issues going on the side, I think we'll definitely see a even better show than we saw this year, which would be really, really cool. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I know. Let's turn the clocks on. Let's count down to the next year.
Let's count down. All right, guys. We are here to talk about a suggestion, a recommendation Wallied had made. What are we going to be talking about?
Yeah, so we're talking about a very amazing animated film. It's Kung Fu Panda. It's from 2008, which is crazy.
Damn.
Yeah. So yeah, essentially this film is about a panda named Po, voiced by Jack Black, who is pretty much just like obsessed with the Furious Five. He loves Kung Fu very much, but he's conflicted with also his dad, quote unquote, noodle shop and everything like that. And so one day when he's going to like pretty much sell noodles and everything, he decides to go to the Jade Palace to see who's going to be the next Dragon Warrior and everything. And that's kind of where the film starts and everything like that. And yeah, this will be a spoiler discussion, so I'd be surprised if you guys haven't seen it. I'm kind of jealous if you haven't seen it. Definitely check it out. But yeah, this is a film that I actually saw when I was younger, and it's a film that I remember really loving just from like the action and everything. But as I've gotten older and older, I've loved this film even more than I did when I saw it when I was younger. It gave me a newfound appreciation for it and everything, especially with Master Oogway's character and a lot of the important lessons and everything that you learn throughout, and especially Poe's journey and Master Shifu's journey in general of them basically learning from each other, of the teacher-mentor thing. And you kind of see how much of a big impact it has on both of them, and how Poe is just not willing to give up even with the imposter syndrome and everything that you see throughout. And so, yeah, Nabahi, what was kind of your first experience with Kung Fu Panda and everything?
Yeah, the first time I saw it actually was in school. I do remember I didn't go to the theaters to watch it. We were in school, and then teacher had a bunch of movies. It was like towards the end of the year where you're just kind of filling out the time. And the teacher was like, all right, guys, we're going to vote on which movie to watch. And this was the movie everyone voted for. And so, yeah, my first time seeing it was on a tiny 20 by 20 TV.
Same.
It still kind of blew me away watching it. I was just like, damn, I can't believe I missed out on seeing this movie when it came out. Because even seeing it on that small of a screen, like the animation stood out. Like it's just absolutely amazing. The stylistic kind of opening and everything was just, it kind of left me in awe. And obviously my friends at the time, they were just kind of into it, not really, but I was just kind of sitting there really connecting with this movie. The martial arts in it is really well choreographed and just kind of pays respect to a lot of the martial arts that you see in a lot of movies. It feels very reminiscent of like kind of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of stuff.
Yeah, Bruce
Lee. Yeah. And just really kind of pays homage to that. So I can't even imagine like them animating this thing. Like, where did they draw all this choreographing from? Like, how did they plan this out? There's some shots in here with this fighting that's just like says so much in such a little amount of time. Like, there's a shot where this guy gets like kicked up in the air and like he flies like right next to the camera, and in the background under him you see like all this
fighting.
Yeah, all this fighting
guards
going on, all the guards and everything. And it's just, it's like 2 seconds, yet it conveys so much and really just kind of impresses you. So not only that, just the characters are also great. I feel like Jack Black, he kind of does something different. I don't really feel like this is a similar situation to like a Will Smith in Shark Tale, where it's just kind of Will Smith being Will Smith.
Will Smith fish.
Yeah, I feel like this is Jack Black very much trying to be a different character, and it's him trying to emulate this kind of character design and everything. And I heard, I guess, while they were making it, they wanted Poe to be a bit more standoffish and everything.
That's what I heard too. Like he was going to be originally like more unlikable and everything like that. And I think I appreciate that the film is that he is a lot more likable and he's a lot more of a goofball, but on the inside he has a lot of heart and he cares a lot about like his community and everything and just like kung fu and everything like that. He's very passionate about the things that he loves, you know?
Yeah.
And I also just really appreciate that like they got Jack Black because I feel like he's such a perfect fit. Yeah, I really love his voice performance in it. It doesn't feel like distracting in any way. It feels like you're genuinely like listening to like a character, you know? Just the way he can go from these like quiet moments and more kind of serious moments to these more like goofy kind of like action packed moments is like, it's super well done. And I think he really encapsulates it really well.
Yeah, it feels like they both, the directors, animators and everything, and Jack Black kind of work together to make this character work. Especially when you hear that they were planning for Poe to be a lot different. Yeah. And when they got Jack Black, they kind of wanted to change it. I think that just shows you how the collaborative filmmaking process kind of works. It's like sometimes you may have to change things that you weren't originally intending on.
Exactly,
you know?
yeah.
And I feel like it works for the better because if Poe was more standoffish and kind of unlikable, I don't know if this movie would work as well as it does.
Yeah. It'd probably be all right.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It would definitely feel a lot different, but I don't know. I just feel like they touched on something really special. And I just don't feel like Jack Black's just simply phoning it in. He's one of the few celebrities that I feel when he does voice acting, he still gives it his all and he tries to change, you know. Say what you will about the Mario movie, like even his performance as Bowser.
He was the best thing about that film.
I felt like he was doing something different, you know. And that's the thing with a lot of these celebrity voice castings and everything, like a Will Smith in a Shark Tale. Right. Sometimes they're just being themselves, which like, yeah, it can work, but it's just not my favorite.
It's just distracting a lot of the time, and it just kind of takes you out of the film where you're like, oh yeah, you're just watching a movie, you know.
Exactly.
I appreciate that like the film sucks you into that world, and I kind of love with the Furious Five is like, aside from like Seth Rogen and David Cross, they're all voiced by action stars like Lucy Liu, Angelina Jolie, and even Jackie Chan as the monkey, which I thought was really awesome. They got him for it.
Really cool.
And then something I just really appreciate too with like the Furious Five is that they are very kind of against Poe being the Dragon Warrior, you know, because they've been working their entire lives to be the Dragon Warrior and to get that opportunity, and for them and for it to kind of be like taken away from them is like, it kind of sucks. It's like, wow, it's like you actually genuinely feel bad for a lot of them, especially Tigress and her whole story. Her whole backstory is like genuinely heartbreaking. When I saw this most recent time, I was like, I don't know, like you just genuinely feel sorry for her and everything. And you see that she's had not the best upbringing, you know, after what Master Shifu went through with like Tai Lung and everything like that. It's interesting to kind of see that different teaching style and how it was before Poe came in and everything like that. How did you kind of like take that away and everything?
I felt like it was a great blend of tying motivations and things together. That's just, to me, always really smart when movies do that. It makes it a bit more seamless and it's less to like follow. Like there are some times where you're watching different backstories and things like that, and you're trying to keep track of everything that's going on. Anytime you can find a way to bridge all those things together, maybe into one storyline or kind of plot point or whatever, I feel like it comes off sometimes really seamless, and you kind of second guess yourself of like, oh wow, that actually makes like a lot of sense. And why don't more movies do this? You know,
right,
one thing I love with the Furious Five that just feels like a simple nod. Honestly, like most people probably don't realize or even really care. But I like that each animal is a different style of kung fu, you know?
Yeah,
like that's so
definitely. Yeah.
cool. Like the crane, the tiger, the monkey. It's just something simple and it's on the nose. Yet to me, that's really cool. And it kind of says a lot about them making this movie.
It shows how much passion and care was put into it, and it gives like each of their personalities. It makes them a lot more unique compared from one another and everything like that. And you can tell it leans a lot more into like the Chinese culture and everything with like Chinese New Year's using like the animals and things like that.
Definitely.
So I really appreciate that like the film does that.
Yeah.
And I also love that the Furious Five just plays a big part in this film, because that's one of my biggest issues with like the third and fourth one, especially the fourth one, is like they're not even in the movie at all.
Oh my God.
So I really appreciate, so watching this was like, it made me appreciate they actually played a big role into the film rather than just being like background characters, or they just referenced them once, you know. Especially the sequence where they go to like fight Tai Lung before he comes to the city. It's like, and granted, all of the action sequences are absolutely like phenomenal in this film, but man, that one with like the bridge and everything is just like, I've seen this movie so many times and I'm still trying to figure out how do you even come up with something like that. It just leaves you on like the edge of your seat. I love just how invested you get into like that action and everything like that. And I love that whole sequence, you know, especially with like they cut off like the bridge and everything.
Oh, it was great.
My God, my heart was like, my heart was beating like so fast. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Is he still there? You know, it's just like, wow.
There's a certain way to the fighting and everything. And I feel like some other animated movies can do it okay, you know, but this movie really excels at it. And I think that really breaks down to the passion that the animators had for probably movies that they watched when they were growing up.
Exactly.
And they wanted to emulate that, and they wanted to, this is animation, but they still wanted to showcase that type of stuff, you know? And you really, when watching this, I don't think, again, people like you say Kung Fu Panda and people will outright dismiss whatever.
Right.
They'll just be like, like what? You know, but there is so much appreciation on an animation standpoint in this movie that I think people really need to go back and realize how big this movie is, you know, just from an animation standpoint. Like the story is great on its own, you know, but the animation is just like, at the time, it's on another level, you know, like this is just, wow. Like you are, again, just put it on and you'll be in awe. I guarantee it. This is definitely crazy 3D animation going on in this movie.
And especially, I mean, we could talk about it, is the whole Tai Lung escape prison break scene is like, God, it leaves you speechless. Like, honestly, the way it uses like the reds and everything with like the arrows and the way he like jumps through like all the different rocks and you're kind of trying to figure out like, how else is he going to make it out, like out of this prison and everything, you know? And I think it also is like a perfect introduction to Tai Lung too. Cause it's like, you see how much of a menacing, intimidating villain he is. You know, he's not somebody you want to mess with and things like that, you know, even with all of like all these guards there and everything, you even see them get scared by the end when he drops like the dynamite. He's all, can we run now? I just, it's easily, I think for me, one of my favorite action sequences I think I've ever seen in a film, honestly.
It's amazing.
It's just wild to me.
The one thing I want to mention is animation, fighting, all that's really good. But this movie has a lot of humor that is really kind of well thought out. You know,
definitely.
It's not just simple kind of kid humor, like a pose farting or anything like that, which this movie could have very clearly just kind of done, you know? Yet a lot of these jokes and stuff, they feel really thought out. And granted, it's not like the funniest movie I've ever seen, but when you're watching it, you appreciate that it's there and you appreciate the thought that was kind of put into it, you know? Yeah,
it's a nice layer to what you're watching and everything too. And I love, I think underappreciated aspect of the humor that I don't think a lot of people realize is Master Oogway is just kind of like a funny character in general. You know, especially one of my favorite moments is like where Master Shifu is giving like I have bad news, and he's all, there is no such thing as good news or bad news. And then, you know, Master Shifu tells him about the bad news and he's like, oh, that is bad news. That to me is just like one of the funnier moments of the film that I love. Or the moment that I really appreciate a lot too is where Poe and the Furious Five are just eating like noodles and everything, and Poe is imitating like Master Chief, and Master Shifu comes in and he's like, and Poe is like, oh, was that too on the nose? I love that. I love like the film can slow down and show those like humorous moments. It's not like too dark, but it's also not like too humorous where it's like, it's just like too much, you know?
Yeah.
I like that it's like a perfect balance between the two.
Yeah.
And I think it balances them really well to where you're like, wow, the drama is fantastic, but it's also just really funny in general. And it's also just a really happy film to watch.
Yeah. I will say, out of everything in this movie, there's a lot to love. The one thing that I guess my only kind of not issue, but negative point on the movie is I really like Tai Lung. I think he's great and everything. However, I don't know if Ian McShane really did a great job with voice acting him. While I'm watching it, obviously with Tai Lung, they go for humor, they go for intimidating villain. And I just feel like it's kind of being pulled in two different directions to where I'm just like, all right, I feel like we're not really nailing one of these aspects all that well. And not to mention, the only time you really feel any kind of emotion with Tai Lung was obviously the backstory. But I feel like even then, obviously Ian McShane's not really in that, you know, I'd say when he's like really young. So that's kind of the only time you really do. It kind of crosses over into something that's really great, you know?
Okay.
Definitely by the end of it, I was just like, this villain, he's cool and everything. I'm not going to say he's bad or that it didn't work. It works. I just feel like, I don't know. I was just trying to pick at it. I was like, is it the voice acting? Something's not really meshing with me all that well, you know? I just felt like it could have been a little bit better. Obviously, the main cast and everything is just absolutely great. Standout parts of the film, and I just maybe wanted a villain that was maybe a little bit more of a show point of this movie, you know. When I look back and out of all the aspects that I love of this movie, I would say the villain is definitely towards the bottom,
I guess, compared to the next villain from Kung Fu Panda too. So I could see that for sure.
That's probably what it is.
I think for me, one thing I appreciate with Tai Lung, and I think the reason why I kind of like him a little bit more as a villain is just because like the climax where him and Shifu have this fight and everything, and Shifu is telling him like, I failed you and I'm really sorry. He actually genuinely apologized to him, and you kind of see Tai Lung just stop there for a moment, and you kind of see like he almost kind of questions like if he is being honest and true about it, you know, but then he kind of goes back to like fighting him, you know, because that revenge he's so sucked into that revenge and everything. And you see how it's affected him and how he's kind of like the inverse of Poe and everything like that. And that's kind of the reason why I love Tai Lung as a villain, is because like I love that different contrast between like Poe and everything like that. And you see the different routes that they took and how Master Shifu taught both of them, you know. I think that's kind of the main reason why I kind of like Tai Lung a little bit more in this film, and kind of why I enjoyed the voice performance at points for sure, with especially in the climax and everything like that.
Overall, this again, like that, it's nothing distracting while you're watching it. At no point are you going to feel like this villain is inserviceable or doesn't work. That's not what I'm trying to say. I know it may sound like that's what I was saying, but it at the end, it still works. Everything really, really works. I think it's just the other aspects of the movie really shine a lot brighter for me. And obviously with DreamWorks, they have some really good villains, you know?
Of course, yeah.
And this one does kind of fall in the back seat of some of the other villains that I really love. You know?
For sure.
But it's still really, really good. Again, with this movie, animation is just such a strong point. I really just can't say that enough. Again, like we were talking this 2008, like, guys, like that is really insane. Like it showcases so much, and it is super stylistic at certain points. Really just goes for a different animation style. And again, that's one thing I love with DreamWorks is they do those different styles. You know, they're not afraid to
take risks, even if it falls flat on its face at times. You know,
that's one thing I'll say. Like, obviously, I love Pixar. Pixar is really great and everything, but when you see the opening of the movie, you've seen all the animation you're going to see in the rest of the movie. Rarely, very rarely do they kind of switch up styles in the middle of the movie or have like a cool backstory with a different animation style, you know, things like that. And just totally flip it on its head. This movie had that, and this movie had it at such an early time in 3D animation. You know?
Yeah, they definitely like pioneered a lot of that 3D animation too, because I know they had been doing it for a long, long while and everything. You know, I mean, granted to compete with Pixar, but I feel like when it hits, it's like wow, it's on like the level of like a Pixar for me. Honestly, it's like it's crazy how much like just care and love is put into the animation. And I think one thing that I think is underappreciated also is just the designs. Like they look awesome, you know. It really kind of sucks you into that atmosphere and the world that it creates, especially with the transitions and everything, you know. The way it shows from like Tai Lung of like his shadow to like the city was like, that's such an awesome awesome transition. And there's a lot of great transitions like that throughout the film. And yeah, I think for me that's just like it's just mind-blowing, honestly. It's just like, wow, you know, this is like 3D animation at like its finest, you know. And it's like you watch the new one and it's like not as good. All right, sorry, that's enough Kung Fu Panda 4. But something I wanted to talk about actually that I really love in this film is the relationship between Po and his dad, Mr. Ping, which I really love a lot. It's something that, granted, I think is expanded a lot better in the second film and everything. But I love that in the first film, you kind of see like Po kind of has this pressure of like being the next successor to like this ramen shop and everything, you know? And I love that it's like he's kind of tied between like the two worlds of like, you know, wanting to do Kung Fu, but he also doesn't want to disappoint his dad and everything like that. And one of my favorite scenes in the film is where he's kind of like almost given up at that point because he's scared to kind of like fight Tai Lung, and he goes back to like talk to his dad and everything. And I love that his dad just tells him about like the secret ingredient of like his soup and everything. And I love that he just tells him is like nothing, you know, because he believed it was like, you know, it's a great soup. He believed in himself. And I love that message of the film really well. And especially it ties well into like the scroll and everything and how it's just blank, but it's like, if you look at it, it's actually like, no, it's you, you know, it's the heart, it's the passion. That's where it comes from, you know? And I love that it ties between him and his dad because they both have a passion. One has a passion for noodles and the other has like a passion for Kung Fu. Yeah. And I love that it ties really well together.
And one thing that I appreciate with this as well is it shows, like Wallied was saying in the beginning, this story of like imposter syndrome, you know? Yeah. And conveying that message for younger audiences and everything. This does a really good job at that, you know? And it kind of spins all the tropes and stuff on its head. Obviously, when you hear the title, like Kung Fu Panda, it's like you're throwing two opposites at each other. You know, pandas are really gentle, loving creatures, and, you know, and it's just like DreamWorks does that so well, where they just have these two polar opposing kind of ideas and then they clash them together.
Yeah, they juxtapose them really well.
Yeah, and then not only to do that, but then to portray this story of imposter syndrome is just really great, you know? Yeah. And obviously now as we're maturing and growing older, like I've felt that before of like, am I really doing what I, am cut out to do? Like, is this something that I have earned? Is this something that like, am I pulling it off? You know, because sometimes you doubt yourself and you're like,
are you good enough for this?
Am I good enough? You know, and this is a great message to show that to younger kids, you know? Yeah. It's really, really great.
I think it shows it in a very wise and creative way where it doesn't feel preachy or like in your face. You know,
Yeah.
I love that it's kind of shown subtly through like the scroll, through, you know, his dad telling him like, there is no secret ingredient, you know, I just made it up. It's special to me, you know, and it's just something I'm passionate about, you know.
Really great.
Yeah, I really love that aspect of the film a lot. And the crazy thing is too, is like it's under 90 minutes and it's like, it's just everything about it. It works. It has like a nice fast pace to it without feeling like kind of rushed or some things can feel underdeveloped. It doesn't feel like that at all at any point in the film. It just feels like everything is like, it's just almost all killer, no filler, you know, and I really appreciate that about the movie a lot, you know, because I felt like if it was a little longer, I'd be like, you could have maybe cut that out or, that part probably doesn't work. So I appreciate that, like, they kind of restrain themselves from making something that's like not super long or anything like that.
Yeah.
How did you kind of feel about that, like kind of short run time?
I think I know Wallied says this a lot, but it doesn't like overstay its welcome. Again, with this movie, when you hear the title, you kind of know what you're getting into.
Right.
But when you go and see it, there's a whole different layer to this movie that you probably weren't ready for. And if this movie kind of drew out some of these ideas and concepts maybe a little bit longer, you might start to get a little sour on what you're watching, you know. I'm not saying other animated movies have done that for me, but movies in general, I've had that happen to where I'm like, well, you're kind of overstaying your welcome a little bit, you know. Like this is getting kind of
it's dragging,
you know, and this movie's super to the point. It's super concise on what it wants to say. And it conveys everything in that runtime, you know, and that's something that we need to applaud. And we don't need to let people get too carried away with some of their ideas, you know?
Right, you know? Because it's easy to get into that, but it's like, it can make the product worse and everything, you know? And I also wanted to mention one last thing was the skadoosh thing is one of the coolest. At first you're like, oh, you know, like how's that going to play out in the film? And I love how he finally uses it on like Tai Lung and it's like, dang, that's sick. And I also kind of wanted to mention, like, I appreciate that, like, in that whole sequence, it's like everything Po learned from Master Shifu in that training sequence. It's like a really awesome foreshadowing detail I picked up on recently with like the pans and everything and him trying to like climb to get the, you know, like the cookie and everything like that. He climbs as like a way, you know, it's like, it's cool because it's like, it's what he knows best. You know, he's using positive reinforcement and everything like that. You know, he's training him how, you know, Po could easily learn. And I love that. I think that's another thing that I appreciate so much. It's like, sometimes, you know, using discipline and yelling is like not the best way, but if you can maybe show it to maybe where it suits them and how they learn, I think that like they can become like a better person and everything like that.
Yeah. It's something that obviously a trope we see in a lot of kung fu movies and fighting karate movies and stuff like that. But it works really well in this movie, and having that kind of unconventional teaching style really helps to show that people learn differently. You know, not
absolutely.
Everyone is cut and dry, gonna pick it up the same way other people do. You know, sometimes it's like you said, what's unique to them, you know, and that's something that shouldn't really be kind of shut out. You know, you really, as a teacher, you have to harbor that and you have to kind of protect that learning process, you know, because if they get too discouraged when they're learning, you know, they're just going to drop it entirely, you know?
Right.
And it's up to you as a teacher to kind of adapt to those different ways of learning. So yeah, that's really great. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, the music, my God, that's one thing I like noticed kind of more recently. It's just like the music in this film is just absolutely fantastic. That opening intro is super awesome.
Crazy.
And then my favorite personally is the scene where Master Oogway and is like going away and everything, and like all the leaves from the tree are like leaving with him, and the way that music kicks in and it rises up, oh my God,
it's amazing.
It is so beautiful. I don't know what it is with their scores, man. It's just like, holy cow. It's just like really hits you right here in the feels and everything like that, you know?
Yeah.
I love that whole sequence very much. And yeah, so was there anything else you kind of wanted to mention with the movie or anything?
No,
like
I
that?
mean, like I said, mostly with this movie's a lot of positives, a lot of things really work.
Yeah.
I'd really recommend it if you guys haven't seen it, especially for those of you guys who do appreciate really good animation.
Or Kung Fu.
Yeah, or kung fu, or even fighting movies. You like fighting movies? Like this movie does it really well. The voice acting's top notch.
Yeah, never feels distracting in any way. Because I know that's one thing DreamWorks has always been kind of hit or miss with, and that always has kind of bothered me. Is like sometimes they'll bring in like kind of celebrities, and it's like they don't fit the performances really well. Which I will say, my only minor complaint with the film is that I'm not the biggest fan with Seth Rogen and David Cross voice acting. Like nothing against them.
Anytime it's Seth Rogen, it's just Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Even now, guys, we're in 2025 and Seth Rogen has been in the Mario Bros. Movie as Donkey Kong. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's Donkey Kong. And he just drops the ball. He's in Invincible right now, and like, granted,
really?
I like the character, but it's still him just being him, you know?
Yeah.
And like, to be a voice actor over these past, 15, 20 years, it's like,
dude,
at some point, you gotta change it up. You like at least invest in at least a possibility. I don't know if maybe he has taken voice acting classes or anything like that, but it would really kind of show me how much he actually does care. But granted, I think maybe he is just kind of like out for hire. And it's like, if people go to him, they probably are like, we want you to just do your voice,
Right.
However,
could get more adults, I guess, to maybe go and see it.
Yeah.
But something that I think could have been a lot better is, rather than get Seth Rogen and David Cross, is maybe get like Jason Statham to be like the Mantis. I think that would have been like a really cool one. Cause like, I don't know, when I was watching, I'm like, I could picture Jason Statham being like the Mantis.
Yeah.
And then maybe get like Jean-Claude Van Damme or some like famous
sick
action star to get like the crane, I thought that would have been really cool, since you already had like Jackie Chan and Lucy Liu there, it felt like it would have been perfect with the Furious 5 and everything.
It would have been cool to do the obviously the American side of fighting movies.
Right, yeah.
All that stuff happened, especially if you guys haven't seen Bloodsport, like Jean-Claude Van Damme, like those movies and stuff, like they are very much a staple of the fighting movie genre. That would have been really cool.
Yeah, so that's my only minor complaint that I could think of. But yeah, other than that, I really love this film a lot. So many incredible action sequences throughout. Such an incredible message of believing in yourself and showing imposter syndrome in such a unique way. And Poe's journey is just such a phenomenal thing to see throughout. It's so inspiring to watch. It just makes you want to be a better person when you're watching it. And I love that relationship that he has with Master Shifu and everything like that. Yeah, and especially Master Oogway is such an incredible character that I wish the series kind of had more of,
Yeah.
Because I've always really loved that character, especially in this one and everything. And yeah, just an all around awesome ride from start to finish. I will say I do like the second one just a tad bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I really love this film a lot. Highly recommend it to you guys. I'm thinking score wise, I'm probably at like a 9.5 out of 10 for me personally.
Nice.
Yeah, this is just one of the best films I've ever seen. It's a film that I have gone back to so many times over and over again throughout my life. And it's a film that I feel like has gotten even better and better as I've gotten older, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a film that I just absolutely love tremendously.
No, this is a great start to a great trilogy of movies. Obviously, with trilogies, you have, all the great ones. And I feel like these movies definitely deserve to be put in that
category.
Great 3 run, because they all have their own great parts, great aspects and everything. With this movie, obviously being a product of the time, the animation still holds up to this day. They pioneered a lot of different styles and made something really unique. This is definitely DreamWorks when it's at its best. And this was totally a story worth telling and worth watching. I do have my minor complaints and issues with the movie. Obviously, I think the villain could maybe I don't know if it ties to the writing or the voice acting. Probably I'm leaning more towards the voice acting. Could have been just maybe a little bit better. I feel like the humor doesn't really mesh too well with, you know, the intimidating factor and things like that. I just felt like that could have been handled maybe a little bit better. But overall, it works. I mean, it still really works. This movie is just fantastic. So definitely check it out. I think score-wise, I'm probably at a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
Really, really awesome. Check it out if you haven't seen it. All right.
Nice.
The next recommendation, since we were watching this movie and, you know, we're talking about different movies, this kind of got brought into my head of growing up, my dad showed me a lot of, you know, Chinese kung fu fighting movies, you know, and this movie really reminded me of those. And obviously one of the ones that just comes to mind immediately and I just loved as a kid is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
I
mentioned it earlier in the review, but this is something that I definitely want to watch. Wallied, have you seen it?
I have seen it once.
Awesome.
Yeah, I do really like this one a lot. It's been a while.
This movie has one of the greatest hand-to-hand sword fighting scenes I've ever seen in a movie. The stunt work is absolutely incredible. For all you Michelle Yeoh fans, this is what put her on the map for me as just a kid. I was like 6 or 7 when I saw this movie.
Oh, wow.
Probably shouldn't have been watching it, but my dad just showed me it, and there is some great choreography and stuff in this, and not to mention the story I just really, really love. It is a foreign film, so if you check it out, definitely recommend the subtitles. For me with live action, dub doesn't really work for me, so I believe I saw it recently. What was it on? I think it was on either Max or Netflix. So if you guys haven't seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, you are gonna see one of these staples in fighting movies, like, of all time. Like, this movie still holds up. I'm absolutely excited.
I'm shocked it's from Ang Lee too. You know, he's such a that's one thing we'll talk about in the next episode. But yeah, he's a really polarizing filmmaker.
He is. Sometimes it really works. Sometimes it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I haven't seen this one in a while, so this will be fun to watch.
Yeah, neither have I. So I'm really excited to kind of see this with a fresh set of eyes. There's so many different fighting, kung fu fighting movies that I would love to talk about in the future.
That's a whole rabbit hole of its own, you know?
Especially, I can't even mention like Donnie Yen with like Iron Monkey. That's such a great movie that I want to talk about. Also, Jet Li with like Fearless or something.
Nice.
I know a movie that people really love and I didn't understand when I was a kid was Hero. That would be another movie
Zhang Yimou. Yeah.
I would love to talk about.
Okay.
And I'd love to rewatch it now that I'm older. So yeah, there's so many. This was just like a very weird kind of subgenre for me as like a kid growing up. So
nice. Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Cool. All right.
If you haven't seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, check it out for the next episode. Thank you guys for joining us. And we will see you on the next one.
Good day and good night, mates.